Today we'll be talking about development. You know about development. Most governments, most societies, and individuals are now aiming in development. But now, what's development? What are the implications of development? What is the role of the government in development? What leads to decline in development of a nation? And what boosts development? Okay, before all that, we need to know the meaning of development. Development can be said or can be defined in different ways depending on the individuals, on different individuals. Simply, development implies the social, economical, and political implications or transformations of a society. It has three main components. Development has three main components, and one is life sustenance, self-esteem, and even freedoms. For life sustenance, this implies the ability to provide own goods and services, not own but basic needs. That is life sustenance. Self-esteem, this enables self-respect. Self-esteem is the self-respect where individuals in a society are not being used or manipulated by others for their own ends. And lastly, the last component is freedoms. The freedoms that we have, the expanded range of choices for a society. Expanded range of choices in a society involves creation of wealth. That freedom that we have, So self sustenance, freedoms, and self-esteem are the components of development. We've seen different maybe implications. The implications of development. You see about the transport sector, the consumer sector, and even productive activities or the production sector. And this production sector can be even primary, secondary, even tertiary. If a nation has productive activities, I'm talking about farming, for example, in Kenya as a country. Agriculture is the main implication, or agriculture is the main activity that has led to development of the nation. Okay. Leave alone with agriculture, we also have fishing. We have different places that do fishing. The lakes of Lake Victoria, where fishing is taking place in a wide scale, in a large scale fishing. So those are productive activities. They are extractive from the source. Even the mining activities that take place in a country, they both lead to development. We also have the consumer sector. After these things have been provided by nature and they have been extracted, they need to be used. And the consumer sector are the people or the buyers who receive these goods from the sellers or from the manufacturers. This consumer sector are the last. These are the last people who consume the goods and services in exchange with money, maybe. And this money is used in maybe in the transport sector and so on. So development is very ideal for a nation. The transport sector is also another implication of development. The transport networks that we have, the roads, the railways, the airways, all of them implies development of a nation. The government has roles in development of its own nation. The government will determine the goods and services to be provided to the consumers. Maybe the goods like maybe guns. Everyone cannot just use a gun because it is risky. So the government has the role of choosing who to use the guns and who not to, because it's its role. And also, the governments will sometimes determine the prices of goods and commodities, and also the distribution of these goods and services by the government. So the government is very crucial in the development process. Development is multifaceted and dependent on utilization of locally available resources, and even the developing countries, especially those in Africa, are now aiming to have good transport, good markets, and so on, and even those extractive activities. We have the factors that influence development of a nation. The factors influencing development may include the soil types and availability. The soil types may influence development because soil influences agriculture, and you know agriculture is the main implication of development. So if you have good soils in a country, that means that agricultural activities will be carried out effectively. But if the soils are poor, then agriculture will be will not be that good, and maybe will lead to underdevelopment of a nation. We also have the climate of a country, or the climate of a nation. Different nations are located in different climatic zones. The climate of a place will influence agriculture too. I'm talking about agriculture because it's the main implication before we talk of the transport sector and the others. The transport sector of an economy will influence development. So the climate of a place will lead to maybe improvement in agriculture or deterioration in agricultural sector. The climatic, such as rainfall intensity, maybe reliability and distribution, will influence development. We also have the relief conditions, the topography of a place. Look at the places that are located in mountainous regions. Remember, mountainous regions are so difficult to construct. You cannot construct industries in mountainous regions that are rugged terrain. Then you need somehow flat or maybe gentle slope so as to do your construction activities and the rest. Maybe after the topographic of a region, also look at the natural resource availability. The natural resources I'm talking about here are the maybe minerals. Let me use the minerals that are available in a country. Different countries are blessed with different minerals. Some with gold, diatomite, diamond, soda ash, and the rest. These minerals are important in development because they earn extra income to the country, and the income is used in development activities that we'll be talking about later. So availability of minerals is also very crucial in the development process. Apart from the availability of minerals, we also need improvement in different sectors, such as the agricultural sector, the transport sector. These improvements will lead to high development, and has been development, maybe we develop industries. These three sectors, agricultural sector, industrial sector, and the transport sector, are very crucial in the development process, maybe in totality. In addition, maybe we talk about the health services and health care, very crucial in development of a nation. So the implications are good transport sector, industrial sector, maybe education, health, and agricultural sector. If these sectors are effective in a nation, then we are ready to say that the nation is on its development process if they start developing the sectors one by one or gradually. Apart from that, you can also look at the factors that limit economic development. We have different factors that may limit economic development of a country. And these sectors, not sectors, but factors, maybe they can be these sectors, the factors that limit economic development can be avoided if possible, and others may not. So we'll check them one by one. And the most effective one is the political instabilities. Political instabilities limits economic development. Look at the leaders of a nation, what they are doing, and the implications on the citizens. The citizens to the political leaders. The instabilities in a nation. Some nations are very unstable in terms of political. The strikes that citizens carry on in a country limits development because of the distractions that are caused if not peacefully. So we need to have political stability so as to aim in development. You can't aim in development as a country, as a leader, yet there are still political instabilities, there are still wars and such kind of instabilities in a country. And then that means that development process will be very low. Two is the poor state or conditions of roads and maybe generally the transport sector, the poor condition of the transport sector. This will limit the availability of goods and services in the markets. I can even talk of maybe the infrastructure in general, the roads, health facilities, this education sector. If not well developed, then you have a long way to go in terms of development, because education is crucial. Health of every person should be maintained. Such things will lead to development if they are first checked. Activities such as industrialization. Industrialization is very crucial also in development, and that those factors should be checked immediately. Another one maybe is the rapidly growing population. You see, from census to census that are carried in Kenya, maybe after 10 years, these census show that the population of Kenya is increasing at a high rate. I'm talking to Kenya as an example. I'm using Kenya as an example. We also have Nigeria with the population that are increasing at a very high rate. As the population increases, the resources becomes unavailable to satisfy the increasing population. We'll have pressure on the available resources. So we'll check first population control so as to enable planning, distribution of resources and the rest. Population control is crucial. High population will even lead to high insecurities. The youths who are unemployed. As the population increases, people become so many, and we have a high rate or the high number of unemployed populations. The youths will then enter the streets and even start robbery and those cases. This will lead to underdevelopment in a nation. So you should first check the increasing population and take possible solutions so as to reduce the population or control it. Another factor that limits development is the poor planning. The poor planning in a nation, maybe in distribution of goods and services in different governments, leads to underdevelopment. Maybe you plan this and the other thing happens in the other way around. This limits development highly. Maybe, and this is mostly associated with the developing countries where planning is not well done, and this will lead to underdevelopment. And so, talking of poor governance, may include even the bureaucratic procedures, the procedures that are so hard or difficult to follow. These procedures will make it difficult for development process. We also have the unstable world markets. You know, as a country, you may depend on foreign markets, maybe in the sale of the goods and services that are produced in a specific country, maybe for exports. Then the markets may not be such stable. Then you may find losses, maybe due to change in currency and the rest. So stable markets will lead to development, but when the markets are unstable, you know, the world markets depend on so many things, including the prices, unstable prices, or the currencies that change, so making it difficult for development. Also, the polarized development or uneven development is another factor limiting economic development. Polarized development, you know, you may get that urban areas are mostly developed than the rural areas. So this makes it difficult for accessing the services that are in urban areas in the rural areas, so making it also difficult for the development process. Apart from that, we can also look at the factors or the for the low levels of agriculture. You know, I'll be talking of agriculture much, as I said. So the factors that lead to low levels, or the reason for the low level of agriculture production, mostly in developing countries. So which are these factors that or which are these reasons for low levels of agricultural production in developing countries? Let's look at farming techniques, the farming techniques that we use, or the equipments that we use. You know, farming now, it is modernized, and farmers are unable to utilize all the available land because of maybe mechanization. They may be so much expensive, like the use of tractors and the rest. They may be so much expensive, making it difficult for the farmers to access. That is the one of reasons why we have low levels of agriculture, mechanization, and even modernization. So very much land is left bare, you know. This limits development. So we also have the crop varieties that we use. We should have various crops, so as to cater for the future. Maybe we have this variety this season, the next season we have another variety. This one will make it maybe different tastes and preferences for everyone, maybe, you know. Also, the pests and diseases that may attack the crops, the pests and diseases. This makes it difficult. Even the climate change and global warming, this makes it change. They make shift in agricultural production, maybe low yielding, and even most farmers practice rainfall agriculture that has been inconsistent because rain is not consistent. This season we have rain, the next season we don't have rain. So it's also difficult for the farmers. So inconsistent. So we also have the infrastructure. Infrastructure is also essential for agricultural production. The roads, connectivity from the producers maybe to consumers or the markets. the infrastructure. Maybe you take the markets. The markets, when you produce goods and services from not the market but the farms, the goods that you produce need to be transported to the markets through maybe the roads. So when you have poorly developed roads, and then the goods may go bad. We have perishable goods like the flowers that are in mostly in Naivasha in Kenya. So they make it difficult if you have poor access to the markets. Apart from that, maybe education levels, it needs some skills in even harvesting and planting, all those. They need some skills. So when not well utilized, or if you have unskilled labor, then we lead to low levels of agricultural production and maybe losses. Some goods may go bad, that are mostly those that are perishable. The occurrence of conflicts. Conflict is another factor that leads to low levels of agriculture. This leads to insecurity. The conflicts lead to insecurity because maybe if there is a problem, maybe in political instabilities, let's say that one, something like maybe strike and other insecurities, the drivers will not be in such good condition, or may not be so assured that they will reach the markets in a good condition, because they are not certain of what might happen in the road. So security is another key factor that need to be checked on. Maybe drought and desertification, another thing that leads to low agriculture. We have climate change. Climate change leads to desertification in most cases, and these may lead to low levels of agriculture. A drought may lead to even fires because of the dry condition of a place. It leads to fires and so on, and maybe lack of motivation. Farmers need motivation. When they are not well motivated, and then they'll not be so assured of what they are doing, and even leads to losses, because they need motivation and even skills. They need to be taught how to cultivate, how to harvest, and how to take care of the crops, maybe to lead to better agriculture activities. We also have maybe the soils that are in a place. The soils, we have the red volcanic soils, the sandy soils, the clay soil. So the development of our agriculture depends on a specific type of soil with a specific type of crop at a particular time. Most crops have different times and even different soil conditions for their survival. For example, tea farming need maybe volcanic soils. Now the red volcanic soils are not readily available anywhere, so you can't plant tea in a place where there is no volcanic soils. You can't plant tea in clay soils and even sandy soils and the rest. So you have to take that into consideration, because it's also a key factor in the agricultural production. Even incentives from the government. A government has a role in development. They play a major role in development. Now, providing the loans and even crop varieties to the farmers is an essential thing, because it will lead to motivation. Even if the farmers can't afford, the government may offer loans so as to be repaid back when the crops are finished and even sold, so that the loans are repaid back. So the government has to take that into consideration too. Apart from that, the developing countries has many development challenges that maybe we should look at. The development challenges in developing countries. So one of the challenges in developing countries is the gaps in population characteristics. The gap between the youths, children, and the aged is very large. In developing countries, you have a very huge number of youths. So these youths, many are not employed. Now, this gap will lead to maybe a poor state in an economy because, you know, youths are mostly associated with crimes, with negative characteristics. Youths are the ones who are associated with social cases like maybe rape and war, maybe using drugs. You know, these things are the ones that pull down the development process as compared to aging population, mostly in these developing countries, by which you find the number of young population is high than the working population. The young population, this leads to high rate of dependency levels. Now, this one makes development process slower. Now, the rich countries, look at the rich countries, maybe like Japan, Canada, and even the UK. The number of children is very low. It's compared to the to aged or the mature people who can work. The number of employed people is very high than the young people. Now, this reduces competition and the risk of the future generation to suffer. You know, as the resources as the resources get extinct, or as the resources are fully utilized, the future generation will not be able to get the same resources to use. When the land is overused, maybe due to overpopulation, now the land has been occupied maybe by houses, the buildings to hold the increasing population, then the upcoming population or the future generation will not be able to get more land to cultivate. You know, this makes it a problem mostly in the developing countries, and you get it that rich countries will get richer and the poor countries will get poorer with many children because many people are idle. The education status is very low. As people are so idle, they are not thinking of any other thing. They then go on, maybe they get maybe more children and they increase the population. Maybe the government is not even concerned. They are aware when the population is already high and they can't control because it was not formally avoided. So controlling the population is very essential, and even the population characteristics should be checked so as to enable fair increase in population, increase in development, I mean. So development essentially will means betterment, maybe bettering education, having good education, and even increased trade that will better lives. As we increase the trade, you harvest more and sell more, get profits, then that one will mean development. And even education. Education is also very essential. The combination of rapid population growth, like Kenya, maybe the population is growing at maybe a rate of 1.8% to maybe 2.4% per annum. Now, this combination of population growth and maybe the stagnation in rural areas, the development stagnation. You know, rural areas are not developing at a higher rate as compared to the urban areas. So the combination of the high population and the low development levels will lead to maybe poor state. And then you get it a problem maybe when you look in development. So Rural to urban migration is another thing, but before that, we need to create some industries in the rural areas. Creating industries in rural areas will lead maybe to development prospects in the developing countries. Okay, now we can look maybe at the second challenge, which is the rural to urban migration. We get so many people moving from rural areas to urban areas. Uh, in developing countries, mostly that is maybe in search of better education. This this is as a result of uneven development, whereby the rural areas has no services like maybe banking services, financial services, maybe so education, the schools. Mostly they are located in urban areas. The universities, the colleges, they are located in towns. Maybe this forces people to move from rural areas to urban areas, maybe in search for maybe education, jobs, and even luxury. These will lead to underdevelopment in rural areas and increase in population in the urban areas, which is not good when it comes to development process. This rapid population growth will even lead to high rates of pollution. Pollution will lead to other effects, maybe diseases, like air pollution will lead to maybe heart diseases, maybe the lung diseases, maybe. So, for millions of people in developing countries, which are maybe in poverty, that live in urban areas, that is maybe lack of social facilities, lack of employment, as I said, maybe, and even poor housing, maybe making it difficult for them to stay in the urban areas. So they are forced to move to the urban areas in search for the same. The progress economically, maybe the progress that you need economically is not an end to itself. It's made useless and even dangerous by short-sighted, maybe these are the wasteful and damaging methods of exploiting the natural resources. Natural resources should be exploited as required. You have natural resources, but if not exploited well, then the development situation of a country will be very low, because the natural resources play a big role in the development process. Maybe what has happened to humanity in developing countries? What has happened to them? As humanity become technologically developed in developing countries, look at the pollution and degradation of land, maybe, and environmental areas that show sure method to global suicide. Now the question is, as humans become so technologically advanced in developing countries, yes, we can say yes to some extent, yes, in urban areas, but at the same time, in the rural areas, it is not, because we have uneven development in these countries. Maybe economic growth and development. When we talk of economic growth, maybe, and development, economic growth creates a condition where development becomes self-sustainable. Economic development, I've said that it creates condition where development becomes self-sustainable, and this is because development leads to these things. One, development will lead to expansion of markets, as we said. Development will lead to increased capital accumulation. And finally, maybe expanded industries, and development also able to increase maybe innovation and technological change. So as I've said, maybe let's talk of maybe expansion of markets, economic growth. When you talk maybe in economic growth now, it's not same as development. Now growth is another thing. When I talk of economic growth, I mean maybe expansion of outputs and continuing widening the markets. Outputs are maybe increasing and the markets are widening. We have large markets for our goods, maybe, and this will lead to increased capital accumulation. when you have wide markets, that means our goods will be sold and less that will go bad. That means that we'll have more capital accumulation, and this capital will be very important, maybe in a country, maybe in a developing society, maybe large volume of savings and investments of its inputs and expansion of industries because of the capital that is available. The capital maybe can be used in infrastructure, construction of railways, roads, and even any other social facility, maybe hospitals, and even bettering education. An expanded industry also will lead to maybe services, manufacturing services, and even processing services. Maybe some goods can't be maybe used directly, maybe they need to be processed further so as to be available for the consumers to use in the market. So expanded industry will provide sources of capital, maybe capital for continued expansion of industry, as industry makes profits, and the profits may plowed back into the industry from the additional development. So development of industries is another essential thing. Development should be able to lead to increased innovation. The increased innovation and maybe technological change overall growing and tend to promote further growth in a country. Economic growth, therefore, is also important in general development of a country, because maybe of the accumulation of capital and the other things that I've said, including the expansion of markets and even capital accumulation, industrial innovation, and technological advancements. In addition to that, maybe we can look at the conditions that are necessary for development. So, for individual countries, the conditions that are necessary for development maybe is ensuring population stability. Ensuring population stability will enable a smooth flow in development process, and even the procedures that are used in the development process. It will be steady and orderly developed. A stable environment also that is very attractive to development process, and maybe attractive to investors, that is who maybe invest in a country, maybe that is a condition maybe to necessary for development. And also ensure social justice and observation of human rights. Social justice and observation of human rights. Remember, human have their rights that are, when observed clearly, then it will lead to development. Maybe maintaining integrity is another thing, and efficiency. Integrity and efficiency is good for running governments, maybe to get rid of corruption and bureaucratic procedures that may lead to low development process. So bureaucratic procedures, such maybe collection of very high taxes, may lead to maybe underdevelopment. So another condition that is necessary maybe for development is to ensure that there is efficient allocation of resources for development. Efficient allocation of resources. Maybe when resources are distributed, maybe ensuring that the resources are equally distributed between different parties or even different places. Comprehensive human resource programs. The human resource output from maybe training institutions should match the needs of an industry, not the resources that are not really needed. There must be comprehensive human resource programs that will enable development in a nation. Yeah. So maybe if these conditions are maybe checked on, then we'll have a good steady development. So let's look at the challenges of economic growth and development. The challenges is failure to invest and save. You know, you fail to save, you fail to invest, and that leads to low in development. So people are encouraged to save more and even invest in maybe industries, invest in education, invest or another thing that will lead to development. When you fail to save and invest, then you will suffer to growth, because of the majority of the people um, we will not be having what use maybe in the future because of poor investments and even the conditions even to invest. Someone may not be able or may not be willing to invest because of the conditions. Mm. Maybe you may not invest where there are maybe poor conditions, instability in maybe markets and so on. So poor investment is a challenge when it comes to economic growth. Another one is lack of political goodwill and commitment. So political goodwill, what I mean by political goodwill is that the leaders who are there, they have to be committed to the work of the citizens. The leaders need to be committed so as to allow development to take place. If not, then if the leaders are not committed, maybe in politics, maybe if there is instabilities, then the development will not be seen or realized in such a situation. So political stability is a good thing when it comes to development. So our leaders then should be maybe committed and available to help the investors and provide the necessary conditions that are good. Another challenge to development, maybe as we already said, in the conditions, just deriving from the conditions that were necessary for development. The challenge maybe comes from the high population growth rate. If the population growth at a very high rate, I've already explained that before, that there'll be very little population that will be available for maybe employment, maybe skilled to provide labor, maybe that's what I mean. So I'd already talked about it, because they cancels any gains in economic development. You gain from this side and you have dependents who are depending on you, so it becomes a problem when you're not investing, but when you are trying to develop in the country. So population growth should be checked, and by checking the population, that means that there will be availability of resources that are enough in a given population. The resources then will be used in development because of maybe the saves that could have been used in the other part. The resources such as maybe the minerals, maybe land and natural resources. The natural resources, maybe forests and maybe exploitation of timber, will be minimal if the population is low, as compared to very high population that may overdo the available maybe resources, making it difficult to invest and get more money that is used maybe in development process. Another thing that maybe is a challenge to development is the education systems that people use in different countries. Maybe education system that may not meet the local needs. They are not directed to the local needs. Maybe someone is studying something, a course that maybe you'll get a job abroad, not locally. Then you'll be investing in education, maybe in your country, but as the people or as the students get maybe after they graduate, they disappear to maybe other countries to work there. That means you're investing where maybe you are not getting any fruit from it, because the education systems does not favor our local needs, but maybe the needs of other countries. Maybe someone may study something maybe which may not be offered maybe in one country but in another. So after studying in that country, maybe after education, maybe the needs are not directed to the local needs, but now will make maybe that one student after graduation maybe go and work in any other place apart from the country that he or she studied. So education systems may should be directed to the local needs. The education that is provided in developing countries is often irrelevant and maybe inappropriate. That's where you find people saying that maybe the course you're studying you may not get a job. Maybe the course you're studying is not relevant with what we need. We need this and this. It's because of the systems that we use. A challenge then comes maybe in shortage of technical skills. We also need technical skills. If we don't need the technical skills, as I've said, maybe from education, then we'll have to import people from other countries to come and work with us. Let me use an example, maybe in construction. Using Kenya as a country, maybe as an example, in Kenya, the construction processes are maybe carried out by the Chinese because they have the technical skills and maybe machines that are good to be used in construction, maybe construction of roads, bridges, and so on. So with these skills, then you are able to develop, because so much money is spent when you import skilled workers together with the machines from other countries. That means that the money that could have been used within the country is taken away instead. So technical skills such as maybe in engineering, finance, etc., and the lack of financial resources to access and acquire the resources and acquire the skills maybe and machines. So we need to invest us to get our own machines to reduce on the import of labor. When labor is imported, it is very expensive because you import them maybe together with machines if you don't have them, making it difficult for investment. The money that could be have been invested and used in other systems, in other sectors, is used maybe in construction, maybe importation of other workers that are not available in one country. So such problems should be maybe checked on, because they are leading to very low development in an economy. Importation of labor, maybe that shortage of technical skills, as I've said, together with innovation, combination of both with the failure to save and invest, irrelevant education systems, lack of political goodwill, and very high education. Both of them are the challenges to economic growth. And once checked, then economic growth maybe will then work well with the economy or nation, or even as an individual. Maybe you should even look on ways to develop yourself so as to develop the country. We should work towards one goal of development. Some things maybe require combination of both, or working together, so as to achieve one goal. You should have one goal that will lead to development. If we talk of maybe pollution, that is a thing that is universal. When you pollute an environment, it doesn't mean that you are the only one who will suffer from it, but many people that surround you will suffer from it, and even the birds and the maybe wildlife that depend on that environment. Even if we decide as a country that we should stop these, so as to reduce maybe something like global warming. I'm using this as an example. It's not part of the topic though. But what I mean is that we should be aiming to one goal, that is development. And I said this is because maybe I use an example of maybe pollution, that if you pollute an environment, you're not the only one who suffer. That means that all the people around, if I as an individual decide not to pollute the environment and keep it clean, but the people that live around me are throwing maybe papers, are throwing maybe dust, and maybe everything dust from the industries, maybe, then I'll not be helping myself. Mm. That means that I should talk with them, come together. After coming together, you will realize that we'll have a solution that, if worked on generally, it will surely work instead of one person. Then we should all um, avoid all the things that keep pulling us down, pushing us down there, and work towards one goal of development. Mm. What will show you that maybe you've developed? What shows that maybe a country is developed? Mm. What shows that one? Maybe GNP, no, GNP, the gross net profit, maybe shows how maybe a country has developed. Many people have started to question the type of development that have pursued in developing countries. And that maybe the standard measure of development has been GNP, as I've said, a gross national product. The gross national product has been the measure of development in a country, which is the measure of the total economic worth of goods and services. Total economic worth of goods and services. The World Bank is categorized with maybe persons earning maybe those people earning, maybe, let's say, like 1,000 pounds maybe per annum, or developed as such earning less as underdeveloped. Above 1,000, maybe should I use pounds? Maybe 1,000 pounds, maybe they are considered maybe developed, but those earning below are considered maybe underdeveloped. Development is based on stimulation of the gross national product by growth of four major factors. That these factors that are based in the stimulation of GNP, and GNP can increase in major factors, and these are the factors that I want to talk about. Mm. The indicators of development, that's what I'm trying to say. And I've said that GNP, the gross national product, can be increased by four major factors. So one is the increasing capital accumulation. When you increase capital accumulation, if a country maybe has maybe more capital, the key to development is increasing capital accumulation, which will increase production by facilitating investments. When you have more capital, means that you'll start maybe more businesses, because capital is the maybe aids maybe that will make a business to start maybe a business. If you have more capital, that means maybe you will invest in businesses. You'll start any business if you have capital that is enough. If you have high income, maybe you'll have more savings, because you can't save and you don't have income. So if you have income, automatically you will save. After saving, you will maybe have high investments and high production, and that will lead to high income. It's just like a cycle. It's just like a cycle where you have high income per capita, high per capita income, that is. Then you'll have higher savings. After you have more savings, then that means that you will invest. After investing more, the more you invest, you'll have more production. You will produce more from what you invest. And when you produce more, that means that you will sell more and you will have more income again. The income you will have, you will save more. After you save, you invest. Investing, production, invest. It's just like a cycle. Then that means that if you increase capital accumulation, then that will indicate development. If people in a country are earning from the investments and savings, then that means that maybe there are signs of development. Another one is the mobilization and use of new resources. Mobilization and use of new resources. The existing natural resources should be exploited to support developing activities. There are existing natural resources that are not being exploited in a country. Maybe gold is in a country, but maybe not realized or not exploited, maybe because of maybe poor machines, poor labor, and so on. Once these are exploited and the resources used, that means that a country will have more money to use. The money that we'll be having will be used in different sectors, and this will increase the savings. Once the savings increase, then we'll have more income. More people having more income, that means that the country is developed. So we should exploit the natural resources that are readily available. Maybe oil, petroleum. We should exploit them to make them into work and lead to development. The first UN developed decade, maybe it was in, let's say, 1960s, a set of goal development, that is a 5% increase in GNP, that was to accomplished by by some factors, in 1960s. That was the UN was the United Nations, that is what I mean. Decade in 1960s, they had a goal for development. The United Nations had a goal for development, and this goal of development was in an increase of 5% GNP, and it was to be accomplished by maybe increasing industrial development. Industries play a good role in development. So the United Nations in the 1960s set a goal to increase the GNP by 5%, and they were to do this by increasing industrial development. As industries develop, they suggested that as industries develop, it is believed that development will occur, because industries are very related to development. They lead to development. Investing in industries, that means that maybe you are developed, because industries require so much capital. So when you develop the industries, that means that maybe you are ready to develop economically. So that was one goal, to increase industrial development. And another thing was maybe mobilization of local and foreign savings. Savings, as I already said, savings are very crucial when it comes to maybe development. So the UN decided that maybe they will mobilize the local and foreign savings. They will save within the country and outside the country. Maybe they can even invest outside, to increase maybe economic development. Another one was maybe attraction of more foreign assistance, more foreign aid and assistance. What I mean is this: there are aids and assistance that can be provided from different countries apart from within. These aids can be maybe financial aid, or even apart from financial aid, it can be maybe mechanical aid and assistance. Maybe grants. Grants are the money that maybe you can be given from a different country so that to assist you. They're not loans. They're just money that they give you to assist you. Those are grants. And maybe the local aid from other countries, maybe loans, giving loans. You can borrow loans and then do your businesses, develop, and then repay the loan maybe later with interest. This was one of the aids. Attraction of more foreign aid and assistance. When a country is being assisted from another country, it leads to its development. The UN had targeted that all developed countries to give maybe 1% GNP to developing, maybe to give help in development. Those countries that have already developed, the countries such as maybe, let's talk of maybe, Japan. When you talk of Japan, maybe, and even Canada, using them as an example, the UN agreed that maybe they targeted that all developed countries, now that they have a goal to develop maybe up to 5% GNP, the developed countries maybe to give 1% of their GNP, gross national product, that is. When they give 1% of it to developing countries, it will boost the developing process. So that is what they targeted as the United Nations. And by doing so, from maybe normal understanding, when you are being assisted by others, you will grow. And once they grow, the goal maybe is then accomplished. Another thing is that despite the growth in GNP, most developing countries, there's still poverty among people. Despite maybe those growth goals, there's still poverty in many people. And this poverty may be development of to be characterized by development, maybe characteristics, maybe to show that maybe you have developed. Most people are already in poor conditions. But there is these maybe things that show maybe whether you are developed or not. If you are developed, then there will be less poverty and maybe dependency. If a country, maybe more people are not dependent on others, and maybe others, maybe more people are not poor. When there is less poverty and dependency, that means that the country is ongoing with the development process. Another thing that shows that a country is developed is less unemployment. Less unemployment. You find the ratio of the people who are employed to the ratio to those who are not employed is very low. What I mean is that people who are employed are so many than the people who are unemployed. That means that there will be no dependency. There will be low dependency levels. Everything will be okay because people are employed. And maybe less inequality. Most developing countries are very unequal. If you have less inequality, then it means that you are developed. What do I mean is that maybe social or spatial. If maybe at the start I talked of rural, maybe, and urban areas. You find that rural areas are less developed as compared to urban areas. This is because of the inequality. In the rural areas, there are less industries, there are less schools, there are less healthcare facilities, and so on. There's no even recreational services as compared to the urban areas. These inequalities show underdevelopment, but once a country is developed, then there will be less inequality, both socially and spatially. Another thing, in a developed country, there will be improved education. Education that is directed to local needs, as we already said earlier. If we have education that is directed to local needs, then we'll be saying that maybe we are developed. If you have improved education, good education systems. Poor education systems need that shows that we still have something to do about it and should be done urgently. Because education is a key to development. It's a key to skilled labor. It's a key to critical thinking. Another thing that is very close to that is health and sanitation. Having improved health in a nation shows that you are already developing or you are already developed. Improved health systems. Having hospitals that are maybe scattered everywhere. Hospitals that are readily available to the patients. As I said, agricultural sector is important. Maybe using it as an example. When a farmer gets sick, then the sick farmer should get medical assistance urgently so as to continue with the work. Every sector should be checked on and maintained and kept in a good condition so as to keep the country developing. All these characteristics of development have not been achieved in developing countries. They have not been achieved. We still have people who are poor. We still have unemployment rates that are very high. There is still inequality, both social and spatial. There is less improved education. What I mean is poor education systems. poor health facilities are still observed in most developing countries. The problem of development is not the degree of capital accumulation. The relationship of any increase in GNP to the majority of people to trickle down the effect, there's no sufficient trickle down effect. There's not one. I've not seen one. The social indicators of development therefore measure then an economic variable such as maybe education, as I've said, housing, health, and maybe sanitation. It's maybe a key in all this. I mean, all these social variables are important aspects of development, and it is because of this that the second, um, the second of maybe the United Nations Development Decade emphasizes the social indicators of development. The emphasis on that, their goals, the goals of the United Nations was to reduce poverty, to reduce unemployment, to reduce inequality, to improve education and improve health and sanitation. So, if these things are checked, and maybe we should be talking now of maybe having developed as compared to other countries. So, the development country, not development, but the developing countries should have the strategies to development. These strategies, when taken into place, when looked keenly, they will lead to development. And these strategies are the ones that I want now to tell you. One of the strategy that developing countries should be aware of is that development cannot take place if it depends on external conditions, if it depends on external capital, if it depends on external markets, and so on. It will not take place if it entirely depends on external things, maybe technology, labor, or anything, because they are not consistent. They may not be available every time you need them. External markets will change, the currency will change. So development should be within a country. Maybe if also encompasses the external ones, the external factors or conditions, then it should not entirely depend external. What I mean is, developing countries should also take local available factors so as to develop and not depend entirely with the external factors, because external factors are not consistent. They change. I'm using the markets because of the currencies. The currencies are not equal and they change each and every time. The global markets are unstable. If you depend on them, then fail. Another thing that a country should take into consideration as a strategy is it should be concerned with the social consequences of the society. A development plan is about people and not things. So everything has consequences. So the development strategy should aim at making sure that the people are satisfied socially. The people in the society are satisfied with the strategy that is being used. It should not to exploit them, it should not to abuse them. But in order to develop, as I said earlier, it is a thing that maybe should be done with unity. Unity, that is what I mean. So, the plan should be concerned with the social consequences of the society. It must ultimately interwoven with social fabric of society. I don't know if you are getting me. It should meet the social needs of the people or in a society. then that's development. That's one of the strategy as you plan for development. Look at the consequences that it will have to the people, because development is about people, not about things. Yeah. Another thing is that neither capital, okay, I mean, neither capital nor capital accumulation constitutes development. Remember, capital and capital accumulation are the effects of development, but they are not development in themselves. Having more capital, as I said earlier, will lead to development, but capital itself is not development. You should understand this. When you are making the strategy to development, not just having capital. Capital may be available, yes, but it doesn't mean that you are already developed. It follows that mobilization of capital by the government is not a prerequisite of development. Taking money from people, maybe by heavy taxation and forced savings in order to build highly capitalization projects, is not development. You may be having more capital, a lot of money in a country, but it doesn't mean that you are developed, because how you use the capital that you have, how you manage it, shows whether you'll develop or not. We've said that capital should be invested. When you invest, that's where you lead now to development. Having the capital on its own is not enough. Building a business, maybe, that will earn you more money, more capital, in order to invest, to expand, to build innovation and use it in other sectors. That's what it needs by development. Not just taking money maybe from people, maybe governments who are not concerned may just take money maybe through heavy taxation, maybe forced labor, maybe forced savings, to build a highly capitalization projects. That is not development. People should be satisfied that the money is used in this way and the other. Then that means that planning should be done. Planning is crucial when it comes to development, not just having the capital. Another thing is that development must aim at balanced growth, both social and spatially, ensure equity. That's what I mean. It should aim to balanced growth, not development or growing in towns and leaving the rural areas undeveloped. Remember, GNP is all about a nation, not part of the nation. Development is all about the nation, not part of the nation. If you decide to check on development, then it should start from a place to place, very equally distributed amenities, resources, and even services in every place of our country. So, one strategy is to ensure that there is equity in everything. Having equal development in a country will even reduce instabilities, because of many will be complaining that we don't have roads, but they have. Who will sort these? This one should be sorted during making strategies to development, making plans, and any other thing that will lead to development before it comes into action. A developing economy must also be equipped with the necessary incentives for all those with entrepreneurship potentials. If you realize that people are there, entrepreneurship, people are ready to trade, people are ready to work, People are ready to start businesses. People are ready to make decisions, you know. Then it should be must equipped with the necessary incentives. Those people should be given incentives. Maybe they should be given maybe loans to support them, you know. Once they're supported, then that one will reduce unemployment rates. They'll be self-employed in their work as they sell their goods, maybe entrepreneurs, you know. When they are equipped with necessary incentives, um, I'm talking of those with potential, then development gains more momentum when it is not imposed or not participated by the people in the area in a meaningful way. Development requires a big push based on a few scarce resources available, that requires proper project and maybe privatization. When these things are checked into, then development is said to take place so well. So those are the strategies. As I've said, maybe I say that it should not cannot take place. Development cannot take place if it depends on external factors. That is one I said. Development can't take place if it depends on external factors. And two, I said about that it must be the plan is all about people. Then it must interwoven with social fabric of society. It must be concerned with the social consequences of the society, not dependent on external factors. Should be concerned with social consequences of the society. I also say that it is neither all about capital and capital accumulation. And another one is that it must aim a balanced growth both socially and spatially. And lastly, I've talked about equipped with necessary incentives for those people with entrepreneurship potentials. That's all about that's all about the strategies to development. Now we'll look at the types of aid or assistance that maybe should be given maybe from other countries to help in development. I touched on it maybe a little bit, but now we'll look at deeply the types of aids or assistance that can be given maybe from other countries to help the developing countries also develop. And these types of aid and assistance can be grouped into different categories maybe. We'll group them into financial and technical aid, the assistance, the types of assistance. Maybe we'll start maybe with the financial or monetary aid. Remember, it is foreign assistance. Foreign assistance come in many ways. You can get assistance from maybe a foreign country in many ways. In terms of maybe financial assistance, it may be in two ways. A country can be helped in two ways. That is bilateral or multilateral aid. Bilateral aid is a direct country to country. It is country to country loans, you know. Maybe a country borrows a loan maybe from China, or even grant. Maybe Kenya with China. Just to direct country to country. That is bilateral aid, where two countries negotiate and they give loans and repay back with interest. You know, that is what I said about bilateral. But in multilateral, financial assistance is given maybe with international agencies that assist in development, e.g. the World Bank. The World Bank is a multilateral aid. It can give maybe loans or grants to different countries. Apart from the World Bank, we also have IMF, International Monetary Fund, that gives financial assistance to different countries. And most of the aid is given with the aim of developing natural maybe resources and improve the welfare of the people. That is the aim of assistance from other countries. It is very crucial when you get assistance from different countries. Another aid, I said financial or technical. About technical aid is mainly in form of equipment and maybe capacity building. Okay, technical. A lot of development parties prefer giving this type of assistance. Maybe you ask for assistance maybe from a country such as China, and they give you maybe a machine, maybe a tractor that you use in your development options. Most of the countries love this instead of money, because you can just hire a machine. Comes, it is used. There are many expensive machines. Those expensive machines, you can borrow them from a country, then return them later after you've used them. That is another assistance apart from financial aid that we've talked of: multilateral and bilateral. Bilateral, we have already said that it is about a country to country, direct country to country loans or grants. And I used an example of maybe Kenya and China, maybe just direct. But multilateral, it is a situation where financial assistance is given through international agencies. And the international agencies that we have, mainly we have the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, that helps in financing maybe projects of developing countries, and this increases the welfare of the people. The technical aid is given to developing countries in terms of maybe equipment, capacity building, technical training, and maybe all those machines that may be needed from one country to be used in another. And I've said that most countries prefer having the technical aid. That is why is it that we have a spatial development, a spatial structure of development in developing countries? You find that different countries have developed in different manners. Not countries, but parts of the country. You'll notice that some countries have the places. We have the core regions, the regions that are very developed. We also have the central regions and the periphery regions, or the rural or underdeveloped regions. This inequality of development is experienced there in different scales, maybe regional, national, local, and even global scales. Why do we have this spatial structure? We will look at the spatial structure maybe in three phases. Maybe we'll talk of the core regions, the central regions, and the periphery regions. Now, what are the core regions? The core regions are the highly developed regions in a country. You know, a country is not just developed in everything. You will find one region that is very developed, another one that is middle way, and another that is very poorly developed. Underdeveloped, we can call it outlying, or even the periphery. So, we have the core regions. In many countries, the core regions are always the cities. The cities are always classified as the core regions. They are highly developed. They have everything. The core regions have good transport network. They have good trading systems, improved education, healthcare, and even recreational activities. They are very improved or developed. They are highly developed in the core regions. Taking an example of Kenya, Nairobi is a core region because it has institutions, maybe learning institutions are there. We have an example of the University of Nairobi, the Jomo Kenyatta University, and colleges are there. Schools, they are very developed, and they are highly populated also. Now, you can't compare Nairobi with maybe other counties like maybe Kitui, because they are maybe Turkana, they are not developed as compared to it, because even administration, it is even developed in administration terms, political terms. The State House is located in Nairobi. That is our core region. That's what I mean. That there is a spatial structure in development in developing countries. One part is highly developed, while another one is poorly developed. So Nairobi is a core region because it has those, and it is the capital of Kenya maybe. Apart from the core regions, we also have the central regions. The central regions are characterized by the maybe industries. You find that in a core region, the industries are not located in the city, inside the town, that is. We have the outskirts that surround the core region. It is something like a circle maybe. When you draw a cycle, and another cycle, and another, maybe three of them, you'll have the center one, which is the core region. Then the second, which is now the central region. And then the outskirts, now the last cycle, will be the periphery. That reflects what I'm trying to talk about, the spatial structure of development in developing countries. When you talk of the central regions, it means that inside the town, there are no industrial activities. But when you come out of the town, the surrounding regions of the town maybe, or the city, you will have industries there. You will also have farms with the greenhouses that has agriculture, maybe irrigated agriculture, that is well improved. So the difference between the core region and the central regions is that the central regions are characterized by the industries and agriculture. But the core regions are characterized by maybe education, financial services, like the banks in towns, good transport network. In terms where that's where you find the flyovers, and even the floating roads. In the towns is where well developed maybe in terms of political development, the State House maybe, and so on. But the outskirts now, which are the central regions, have industries and maybe irrigated agriculture with the greenhouses. That's the central regions. But now, apart from the central regions, we have the peripheral regions. The peripheral regions can be called lagging regions, maybe periphery, outlying, lagging, and undeveloped regions. Those regions have poor road transport network. Not even road, but also maybe air transport. You can't find international ports in the rural areas, very rare. But in the core regions and the central regions, you can find airports. Now, the underdeveloped regions are maybe characterized mostly by agriculture, rain-fed agriculture, purely rain-fed agriculture, with poor transport networks. Communication systems are very low. That's when someone travels maybe to these regions, the peripheral regions, they are complaining of network. There is no network connection, good communication networks, they are not available. Even the transport, very poor in the rural areas. That's what I mean. And this makes it difficult for people to stay there, and then they are looking for luxury, moving from the rural areas to the urban areas. But rural areas are very underdeveloped in most cases. there is poor education systems, poor sanitation, and even health services in the rural areas. That's what I mean with the spatial structure of development in developing countries. Rural areas, you find that maybe services are so far from one another. Buildings are so far, maybe one person may be living this place, another one. It is sparsely populated. That's what I mean. It is sparsely populated. Because maybe of the land, that maybe a person owns a land specific size, another one another land. So the buildings are built far apart from one another, making access to goods and services difficult because even the markets are far away. Now that is the lagging regions. So for those remarks, maybe I can stop there. Thank you for listening, and maybe we'll meet next. I hope that you've all understood about the development strategies, factors leading to development, factors limiting development, the aims of development, difference in development in different countries, maybe the developed and undeveloped countries, the types of assistance or aid from different countries, and lastly maybe the spatial structure of development in developing countries. Thank you.